Well, hello, Randy Rain here. I hope you're getting into the Halloween spirit. If not, I'll try to help you out here. This is my Animatronic Grim Reaper. I made this probably in 1997, I would guess. It was back when I was learning to weld, and I first learned to weld. And the way I learned to do stuff is I will do small projects that I come up with and learn from there. So I learned how to do brazing. This is all done brazing up here. And then I had a little wire feed welder that I did down here with these pieces. Now, not too long ago, I did refurbish this thing. I redid the little sickle and I made hands for it and I made it work again, but since then it's been junked and I've taken the power supply from it and all this stuff. So I'm going to try again. Let's see if I can do it, and maybe this time it'll stay around because, hey, it's all steel. It's not going to break anytime soon. Well, let me show you what it is. Down here you have a gear motor, and these are pretty interesting gear motors. If you ever remember seeing back in the 90s displays in like gas stations or grocery stores or something where there was a little cardboard cutout thing and it was moving back and forth. It was always one of these little motors in there. The little gear system is really neat in there. You can change it up and make it different ratios of gears. Anyway, it's connected here. This is actually a piece of acrylic. Even though it looks like it's rusted, it's actually a piece of acrylic. So a little piece of a erector set here to hold this rod on. And as it spins, it pushes up this piece, which is the top parts of the arms. But then the elbows are bent, and you can see it's just a nut welded on with some washers welded on. And then I think this is baling wire. I'm pretty sure it's just baling wire that I have here. So what happens is when the arms go up, the elbows bend, but then when the arms come back down, they straighten out. So as it goes down, the arms straighten out. So once it gets to the lowest position, which is here, the arms are pretty much all the way straight. Then as it comes back up and gets to the very top, which is there, you can see this arm is bent 90 degrees and this one's almost 90 degrees. And I guess I could bend it, but I want them to be a little off because it's supposed to have the hands stick right here. But this time I printed out a little skull here. Before it was just an empty void of the hood with some little red LEDs floating in there. This time I'm going to use this skull that I printed out. I also made this little hinge piece here that I'll mount it to. And it will also hook up to this arm. So as the arms raise up, so will the head. And then I want to do some cool electronics on it, so it's like sensor driven. So time to get started. So I've 3D printed this piece and there's a little pin in it. So here's the hinge, here's the skull. So I need this to sit in there like that. And I think I'm just going to hold it in place and just hit it with some CA glue. This is gap filling stuff, so I'll just fill the gaps with it. For people who don't know, this is an accelerator. You spray this stuff on and the glue will go off just about instantaneously, depending on how thick of the stuff you have. The thicker it is, the thicker of the glue it is, the longer it will take to go off because it forms a shell. The outside of it cures, but the inside doesn't. It takes a little longer. So now the skull's going to go up here. And I think it can set a little farther down. Oh shit. I'm going to go with that. So now I need to drill a hole. Maybe I can get to it. Not like that. I need to drill a hole like right there. Okay, well that ain't gonna work. Okay, well there's more than one way to skin a cat. Need to drill a hole right there. Because I want to get one of these screw eyes right in there. For the other side I have a little piece of brass. Then we'll try to hook here. Now I can't solder it to the steel, but I can solder it to itself. And I'm just going to have to glue the rest of it. Okay, I'm going to use a piece of copper here. It's going to go there to there. Bending right about there. Alright, it's time to dress him. He had this little piece of foam here, and it just used some adhesive spray, which is still kind of tacky, and it kind of stays there for a little while. It'll stay there enough that I can put the cloak part back on, because it's all gets sewn. Go over. Okay, the seam runs down the back, so I'll line that up with the spine. Go ahead. And now the sleeves. Now that gets sewn on. So out of all the material scraps, I can't find this material, but I found all kinds of other material that I can make work. So this is going to be something like this in the end. But first I need to do something about these arms. The hands won't stay on, so that's one. I don't like the color of them, that's two. And you can see up the sleeve, so this part needs to be filled in some way. Okay, one thing I want to do is kind of trim them. So now I'm going to put a paper towel here. And I'm using this Flex Foam It. That's a 17. It's a dense foam. It's a dense foam rubber that doesn't expand all that much. The first thing I'm going to do is use it as a glue. Hey, that rhymes. Then I'll just coat these arms. Doesn't have to be pretty. Matter of fact, it's probably better that it's not. Now it just needs to cure like that. Stay on there. Okay, now I'm going to see about giving this thing a paint job. Start off with these all black down in here. Now with these hands, I'll give them a little dry brushing. Okay, now I have some watered down black. Go ahead and dirty it up. Okay, the first thing, I guess, I'm going to cover this up here. Looks like he's got an ascot or something. But okay, and then I think I'm going to fold this here. Use to fill this in a little more. Now to make a base. I'm going to use MDF. I have some 1/2-inch MDF, and I'm going to stack it up 3 layers. I'm going to try to make it look like some sort of rock or something, so I'm going to just rough cut it out and then kind of rough cut a odd shape to it. Cut some holes in the center for the electronics. Stack them up, glue them together, route out each one so that they're all even, and then go to town on the stationary belt sander. And now I'm just going to use Smooth Cast 325 and just coat it all with plastic. First I'm going to paint it with flat black because it dries fast and this has a primer in it. Then I'm going to paint it with this stuff that I have no idea where it came from, but it has a texture and add a little more texture to it. And now I'm just going to dry brush some gray. I'm using a 08 M2 pickaxe chip for the microcontroller. And I'm using a photoresistor to detect light and darkness in the room. And to turn the motor on, I'm going to be using a TIP 110 transistor. So here we are at the computer. So let me show you how this program works that I put into the Pickaxe 08 M2. Alright, so start up here. This is all just making variables. And I'm putting them into the spot of memory. Okay, so then come down here. This turns pin C4 over here into an input. Now, this is going to read C4, the value. So on C4, I have positive electricity going to the photoresistor, also going through a 10K resistor, and then coming in here to C4. And the value is going to be anywhere from 0 to 255. So when you turn this on and it starts, the lights need to be on in the room. So when it comes to here, it's checking the value of light through that photoresistor, and it's putting it into memory B1. Now light is a variable I declared up here. It's going to take B1 and divide it by 2. So let's say it read the light in the room and it's 100. The value is 100. So light equals 100 divided by 2, so light becomes 50. Then this sets some variables that are going to need to be set here. And in the main loop there's just 2 go subroutines. There's detect light and check count. So to go to detect light, first thing it's going to do is it's going to read again the light in the room. This DD here is just initializing. This is just to make sure the first time around it does one thing and then the rest of the time it goes the other way. So if you look up here, DD equals 0. So the first time around it's not going to do any of this. So if DD equals 1, no it doesn't, so it's going to go else. If B1, which is the value of the light that it just detected up here, if it's smaller than light, the value that it started up here, halfway of the light in the room, then it's going to make the random number variable the time count in the clock. It's going to do some multiplying it by 3333 just to mess it up. So it's going to generate a random number from the number seed up here. There's this get random here. And so now it's come down to here. And what this is doing is checking to see if pin 3, which is always an input, it's checking to see if it has a positive to it. And that's controlled by the push button. And basically this is my Halloween or regular mode. So if you push the button in, it's going to be regular mode. And so it's going to divide the random number by a large one. So this is going to be the random count. This is how many times the light has to turn off and on before it activates. So it's going to be a bigger number. But for Halloween and you want it to happen more often, you can push the button and of course it will make it do it more often.
Wait a minute. Strike that. Reverse it. Thank you.
And then it just checks to make sure it's not below 1 and then it returns. And now once it's back up to here, it sets DD as 1 and it will never turn back to 0 as long as it's running. So the next time it's going to do this. But it finishes this out and returns back up to here. And then it checks count. And the check count is if C and T, which you start up here, C and T starts as 1, that's the count. If the count variable is bigger than the random count that was generated earlier, and also of course DD equals 1, then it's going to make C0 high here, which is an output. And that's going to turn the TIP transistor on, which turns the motor on. And it'll pause for 15 seconds, and then it'll turn it off, and it'll reset the count, and then it'll go to random. It'll come down here and get a new number to count to. So then next time when it comes back here to detect the light, it gets the value of the room. So now DD does equal 1, so it's always going to be this stuff in here. And here I have it's mixing the random number up. This is just to mess the seed number up so that the random is more random. Every time you turn the light on and off and it goes through here, it's mixing up this number. So if room equals 1, which room starts off as 1, then that means the light's on. And so it's going to check to see if the ambient room light is lower than light. And then it's going to change it to room 0, which means its light is off. It's going to increase the count. So here when it goes from light to dark, it's going to increase the count. But if it goes from dark to light, it's also going to increase the count. And this is basically just flip-flopping back and forth, detecting if it's light or dark and has it changed. Then every time the count gets added up, eventually it'll come down here and check count. It'll come down here to check to see if it's past the number that was randomized earlier. And if so, it turns it on. And that's how the Grim Reaper works.
That don't make no sense.
Well, it's all done, and I think it came out beautifully. It's as beautiful as a Grim Reaper can be. The electronics work great, and they work the first time, and that's pretty rare for me. I usually have to mess with it quite a bit, but hey, it works. It's now plugged in, and if you turn the lights on and off, it will randomize when it goes. Now, I'm not going to turn the lights on and off because then you won't be able to see it. I can just cover my hand up here. So it's set to Halloween mode, so it'll be 1 to 5 times it turning on. So let's see. There's 1, wasn't at 1. There's 2, wasn't at 2. It was at 3. And then it stops just like that. Now, if I take my hand away, that's going to be 1. It was set to 1. Okay, so when I put my hand back, it's going to be 1. Oh, it was set to 1 again. Okay, now if I take my hand away, that's 1. There's 2, 3, 4, 5. It was set to 5 that time. So as you can see, it randomizes and it'll do it from 1 to 5 times in Halloween mode. Now when I go to the regular mode, I think it's up to like 18, 20 times that it could possibly be. There's 1. See, that time it was at 2. Well, I hope this got you into the Halloween spirit. If it did, I would appreciate a like. If you want to see more like this, go ahead and subscribe and go ahead and check out all the other videos. I'd like to thank these people right here. These are patrons. These are people helping me out so I can build stuff like this and show it to you. There's also a PayPal link if you want to give me a donation. It helps. I can keep on doing this. But anyway, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next week at Halloween for a special trick or treat. Now, I had just learned to weld, and this was my first project, so that's why it's made out of metal. It was just turned on and it just went, and so I plugged it into a socket that worked off a light switch. And this light switch was several in a row, and they were all lights except for that one. It turned on the socket. Now that was one of those switches that you always accidentally hit every time you tried to turn on the light. So what would happen, it would be dark and you'd find the light and boom, you'd hit that and this thing would turn on, and it'd always freak you out. So that's what I want to replicate.